The World Series of Poker has officially sold their souls to some of the most powerful businesses in the poker world. How this can actually be a bad thing, and how Daniel Negreanu can surprisingly have quite a bit of pull in what shapes the landscape of the World Series of Poker moving forward. That and much more on today's episode of Closer Broke than the Poker News. We know the World Series of Poker as the WSOP, a summer festival where a lot of us come together and take our chances at well over $1 billion that has been given out in prize pools since the inception of the World Series of Poker many decades ago. Every year we make this pilgrimage to get our shot at several of the ranging buy-in tournaments that we can obviously afford or get the satellite into. The World Series of Poker has always had this aura, this somewhat of a shield that has protected it and carried it over as one of the most prestigious events to either final table or even more so get that gold bracelet. Ever since I was a young lad, I always dreamt of eventually finding myself in an opportunity at final table to have my shot at one of those bracelets. The World Series of Poker has done an unbelievable job at branding themselves as the creme de la creme. The EPT will always be there, the WPT, and so many more other tournament festivals to name that I can't at the moment. But for me, in my humble opinion, and I think I could speak for a lot of people, the World Series of Poker, for better or for worse, is just kind of like it. There's something about winning a bracelet that none of these other festivals can really live up to at that same level. All that to be said, that is kind of where the pumping of the World Series of Poker ends for me. I have a love-hate relationship with the World Series of Poker. I've never been paid for them to say anything that I'm going to say, so I'm going to make sure to be fairly unbiased and kind of treat it as a real thing. The World Series of Poker is lacking in many departments, and to name a few things, we'll start off with some of the most important. That is the blatant lack of training for their tournament staff, the dealers, as well as the floor personnel. And I can say this in a very genuine way. I don't want to be rude. I'm not going to name anybody, obviously, and I don't think it's a lot of their own faults. Putting people in very stressful positions when other people have put up their own money is a very dangerous thing, surprisingly. Not that anyone's life's in danger, but there's a lot of emotion, a lot of egos, and a lot of different personalities flying at you at like a million miles an hour. So when you put this very inexperienced person in the box that has to now control the pace of play, control the rules, enforce the rules, do all of these things at the same time, when they've been dealing for a grand total of 15 days is kind of ridiculous. Granted, maybe I'm stretching that out. I don't know what the exact training regiment is for the World Series of Poker, but I doubt that it's more than a month in advance. So you more than often are getting people from overseas or people that are new to the industry in general, and they're already, it's sad to say it, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but some of these folks that come here to deal, unfortunately, English isn't their first language, so they're already a little bit on the back end of, they're on a tough side of it. It's already a tough shake, and when you're giving them such a little amount of time to train, it's kind of just a recipe for complete disaster, in my opinion. And I'm sure if you guys have ever played the World Series of Poker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're at a river decision, you're about to make a big raise, a bluff, whatever the case may be, and unfortunately something happens where the dealer kind of doesn't do their job. It happens quite a bit when people angle shoot. It happens all the time. I see it every single day at the World Series of Poker. And again, maybe they wouldn't see this in the first place. Give them another 15, 20, 30 days of training. Maybe they're just not prepared for it. That's a viable argument. But in my opinion, a lot of this just comes down to preparation. And I'll leave the tournament staff on the other side because that's a whole nother video I can go into like a 15, 20 minute conversation about. But yeah, in my opinion, some of the tournament staff got egos the size of the United States. It's kind of insane. And they don't do a great job of setting that aside and just trying to enforce the rules the best they can. Sometimes it feels like they're trying to make a point by penalizing somebody in some really odd way. But, you know, it is what it is. A power trip. I guess if I was in that position, maybe I wouldn't be much better, but you know, it is what it is. A couple of the other things that I'd like to see addressed at some point are going to be things like the pace of play, the lack of food options, the supremely overpriced food options that are there are fairly low quality, the awful selection in tournament venues, as well as the poor time of the year that they choose to do so to host the event. Summer in the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas is literally the worst time of the year for me. Again, this is a personal thing, but 115 degrees is pretty rough. I get a lot of people say, oh, you're just sitting in an AC room all day long. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't want to sit in a poker room for 16 hours a day. And I don't think a lot of people do, honestly. Like, it'd be nice. The one year during COVID, I think it was 2020 or 2021, when the World Series of Poker was held during the November period, I think it was, like late fall, early winter, was freaking mint. It was amazing. It was my favorite World Series of Poker ever. I don't even think I cashed an event that year, but it was the best. It was a wonderful time, and I wish we could go back to that time of the year because Vegas is so much more enjoyable. There's so much more to do. You can enjoy your walk around the strip, and it's a really good time. The vibes are high. One of the last things that I think need to be addressed that I didn't like in this iteration of the World Series of Poker is the online UI. WSOP.com is pretty dismal, whatever the word is. It's awful. It's not enjoyable. It's super tough to use, and the amount of times you get disconnected from the site, you place the wrong bet size, and the fact that it's just not optimized for a laptop or a PC is insane to me. So, you know, that's something I'd like to see addressed. And the good thing about it is, and that ties into the things that I think are pretty exciting to look forward to, is that GG is pretty great at the online thing. Looks a little different from the other sites we might be used to, like PokerStars and, I don't know, Full Tilt back in the day, but I think the site looks good. It's a little fun, and I like the angle that they're going. A couple of the ways that I think we can improve the World Series of Poker as a whole start with the simple things like a very stern stance on player security. As we saw from this last World Series of Poker, the whole debacle of the live, RTA, people running sims, the World Series of Poker main event, blah, blah, blah. All of those things I think need to be addressed, and I think GG does a great job of it. Some of the people that they have on staff for the security are, from what I understand, are some of the best, some of the leading in our field. And more importantly, how can you not trust the guy, Jason Kuhn? The guy's just the GOAT. He's one of the players that is involved in the security team there. And I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot. I've only seen this guy on TV. I've never met him in person, but it seems like a good person that we can all trust. He's a long-time high roller in the space, so I trust that he does have us as players in his mind and in the forefront, which I appreciate. So people like that, I think it's a good thing and what I'm really excited about. And the most important thing for me is just getting these stern rules set up so that there's no confusion moving forward and that we can feel better about when we get to the tables that we're protected. What I would also like to see improved is the WSOP the circuit. So right now the circuit kind of goes around random places. I think they go out of the country for maybe 1 or 2 stops, and those are kind of special ones. But outside of that, they just go to some like random middle of nowhere type places in the US. What I would like, and what the WSOP kind of is already doing with the GG series, which is that end of year, the Bahamas trip, I'd love for there to be in harmony, not at the same time as the World Series of Poker, but maybe the World Series of Poker is in summer and then late fall or early winter like they do now with the Bahamas series. They do a rotating series every single year where they pick a really big venue in Europe or Pan America, wherever the case may be. I think that would be really wonderful, and that can add quite a bit of value, in my opinion, to the people on that side of the world. And it gives us on this western side of the world maybe an excuse to travel a little further away and to make a trip out of it. Because the one thing I don't envy, but also do envy, is that the people that come to the World Series of Poker during the summer are kind of making a bit of a pilgrimage, a real travel from their respective countries and enjoying somewhat a vacation, which for us, I feel like we're just hopping on a 2 to 3 hour flight to end up in Vegas. And it's just kind of like, maybe I'm dumb for thinking it that way. Like I said, I don't envy it because I don't want to fly 8 hours to a place to play poker, but at the same time, it'd be nice to visit some of these beautiful countries in Europe and stuff like that. So just an idea I would have. One of the things that goes hand in hand with a bad thing and how I'd improve it is the current rake structure. The rake is quite immense, and if you want, I'll link down below what like an average WSOP event looks like and what the rake is. You can just read through that sheet. It's pretty crazy. And with all that being said, I would really like, look, if for some reason the rake can't get less or smaller, at least pay the tournament staff a little more, pay the dealers a little more so we can get maybe a higher level of dealers. I know there's a reason why these Aria dealers stay at the Aria and the Venetian dealers stay at the Venetian and the Win dealers stay at the Win. It's probably because they're getting paid more money there. Obviously, they're probably getting paid a little more with the cash tips that they make from dealing cash games. But there's a reason when you go to the Win and play a tournament, how great the dealers are there versus when you go play at the World Series of Poker, the dealers are awful. And yeah, maybe they have had a little more practice, but I can promise you at the end of the day, it comes down to money. And maybe it also comes down to the workplace experience, but I'm assuming the WSOP is not doing a great job at either. So, food for thought. Now I'd like to address a couple of the things that I'm a little worried about with GG stepping in as the, I guess, super powerful upper level people behind the WSOP. I'm a little worried that the WSOP will eventually completely leave the United States. Yeah, I guess it's only a problem for me and my fellow USA people and maybe the people in, I guess, North America or the Americas in general. But in my opinion, the WSOP is kind of synonymous with the US and specifically Vegas, so it'd be a little weird to see it leave. Granted, it has been confirmed that for the next 20 years at minimum, the World Series of Poker will stay in Las Vegas, but, you know, maybe when I'm hitting 50, it'd be a little weird to have to take a flight every single summer to some random European country that I never thought I'd be going to for the World Series of Poker. So, I don't know, something to think about. Another thing that I'm a little worried about is the involvement of the higher players and people maybe with equity in the GG company. I cannot confirm that, so I'm not saying that, but I'm saying higher power or higher player positions like Daniel Negreanu, for example. He's been very vocal about his distaste and his dislike for the smaller buy-in World Series of Poker events like the 300s, the 500s, anything pretty much sub 1,000. He's been very vocal about disliking them, and he says, and he's, you know, I wish I had a video to quote this, and if we can find one, we can find one, but he's pretty much just said that these smaller tournaments kind of make the real bracelets for the larger events kind of worth a little less. And that's where I'd like to push back. I think these smaller events are really important as they work as kind of a bridge to introduce the new player to the World Series of Poker and poker in general, especially the tournament form. A lot of people that I play with in these smaller events almost always tell me the same thing. This is my first live tournament. This is my first tournament. I've only played cash. And they would never have the chance at coming to the World Series of Poker if the entry of barrier, or the barrier of entry was like $2,000 or $2,500. One, because the satellites just aren't there. The infrastructure just isn't there as it is currently, specifically not in the USA. But even more so, just the amount of sheer money. Even if you satellite in for $250 or whatever, you still have to pony up $2,500 at the end of the day. Like, you won a $2,500 worth ticket to get here, but it's still that much money. So in my opinion, these smaller events have a purpose, and to me, they work as a bridge to get players and butts in seats and to kind of introduce them to tournament poker and specifically the World Series of Poker. Well, that being said, there's a couple of things that I am looking forward to with the GG coming into the place. With all that being said, there's a lot to look forward to. GG is amazing with their massive player pool already, and the best part is they have some of the best infrastructure for the satellite system. We can see numbers really start to rocket ship as a ton of packages, I'm assuming year-round, will be had for players to make the trip down to Vegas that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. GG is also a company at the forefront of social media. They do a great job on all of their media platforms of making personalities in poker. Their brand ambassadors are all young, and even if they aren't directly involved in poker, they're people that they get involved with, like the Botez sisters, I believe. One of them is on the GG staff or a GG ambassador. Obviously, people like Daniel Negreanu. These are all positive things that can introduce a lot of new eyes to poker, and that's kind of what really matters at the end of the day, is getting new people involved in poker. In conclusion, I believe that the future is looking fairly bright. There's a lot to worry about and a lot of unanswered questions. At the end of the day, I'm pretty excited for what is looking like the future. And like I mentioned, all of these questions will be answered in time. And I do think that GG is a company that cares about the player. And that's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion, at the end of the day. And to be fair, I don't believe that the WSOP brand was doing much to begin with at the end of the day anyways. The rake was just too high, and it seems like they were doing a poor job of managing it anyways, and honestly, it might just have been a good idea for them to get rid of it in the first place, or to sell it. Congrats to them for selling and making quite the big bag, and congrats to the GG brand, because I think of any of the companies to get them, it seems like GG was pretty much the only real option, maybe WPT and like a back-end deal, but just feels like they got their thing. The Poker Stars and the EPT have their thing. It seems like GG just was a perfect person, I guess, probably the only bidder at the end of the day. All that to be said, do you think the World Series of Poker has sold their soul to the poker devil? I don't know. You let me know in the comment section down below what you would have done, what you expect to be happening moving forward. All that to be said, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe so you can enter that massive giveaway we're doing at the end of the month. Love you guys so much. Deuces.